We're taking flight or taking a bus to the Karamoja region, and this time around we're talking about domestic violence. Domestic violence is on a rise in the northern area of Karamoja, the northeastern area of Uganda, as according to reports, financial constraints have led to this rampant rise. Women remain the breadwinners in many of the families in northern Uganda. They are the backbone of development and comprise of 43% of the world's agricultural labor force, which rises to 70% in some of the countries. These women are often subjected to economic harassment by their husbands. The civil society organizations have called for sensitization by local leaders to have a slight change in cultural beliefs, which has contributed to violence in most of the families in Karamoja.
The links between persistent violence and discrimination against women and lack of economic empowerment are underlined in the Uganda National Development Plan, yet insufficient measures have been taken to address these issues. In particular, women from northern Uganda continue to face severe legal and cultural obstacles to ownership of property. Some are not even allowed to own their personal money and are subjected to economic violence.
In Karamoja, the man's role used to be to herd cattle. When they were disarmed, the roles changed because now it's hard to wrestle or steal your neighbor's cattle without a gun. They'll easily grab you. Yes. So when they disarmed them, the men became dormant, for lack of a better word. They became dormant and didn't have anything else to do. So that's what the men used to do. The woman has to construct the hut, get food for her family, earn a living, but when she returns, she has to hand over everything to the man, because the man is the one who decides how things are.
And I must tell you that it's an issue that almost every woman faces at a particular point in time. It emanates from the power issue. Power is its root cause, because a man, right from socialization, right from when a child is born, boys are nurtured to make money. Boys are nurtured to be breadwinners, and women are nurtured to be subordinates, to be always on the receiving end. So it grows up, it continues to grow into an issue where, for example, a woman goes and plants their garden, maybe grow maize and tomatoes or anything of that kind, and upon harvesting, the man harvests and goes drinking and marrying other.
Gender-based violence is rampant in the Kotido district of Uganda's Karamoja region, where sexual, physical and economic abuse of women and girls remains culturally acceptable.
Some of these things are, like we have discussed, one of it is there's patriarchal system, our culture that puts a man as the head to predominate on top. The man is final. His word is final, and his aspirations, they assume to be aspirations of the family. And yet we have seen that some of these aspects, the man's power most often is misused. The man is earning, children are not studying. A man is driving, the woman is asking for salt at home. The woman has no say at home, or doesn't even have a say in terms of how they can make their own money.
They've become lazy. A man wakes up, he sits under a tree with his radio. So when we reached out to the community, we were told that we need to give them an alternative, teach these men an alternative activity to replace the cat wrestling. And we told the people that, why are we giving them an alternative? There's already everyday activity. The woman was doing maybe gardening and constructing and earning a living. Why doesn't he join? Why don't they work together, to do that? But the issue that we have realized with Karamoja is that the culture is very strong. In fact, if you want a message to move, you have to go through the cultural leader. You don't just walk to a community and speak. The cultural leader has to go with you, because his word is power. It's respected, it's truth, it's gospel, it's everything.
The 2016 Uganda Demographic Health Survey showed that up to 52% of women have expressed financial and physical violence in Karamoja, ranking 7th out of the 15th regions surveyed. The overall 22% of the Ugandan women aged 15 to 49 have expressed sexual violence.
The starting point is to sensitize those leaders, the ones who people listen to. Yes, because if the leader, culture leader, can buy into the idea of partners supporting each other in a home and the burden not being left to one of the people, then they can share this to the community and the community will listen, because the community listens. They don't listen well to outsiders. That's why it's important for them, for their particular settings, it's important to start from the leaders, and then the leaders trickle down to the communities. Because even when you do like a community outreach and men and women come, you realize that women will not speak. They will sit and be quiet. The men will say all the things, the men will respond the whole meeting.
And elders in the community, because I believe Karamoja region has elders whose words are really taken of great value. If all these ones stood up to the mantle of taking, for example, responsibility of ensuring that when a woman is harvesting, they really earn from what they've grown, then that would go a long way. And also women, there is a call to all CSOs around, because I know many CSOs have done a tremendous job that side, to continuously engage women on how do you sustain yourself in terms of gaining from what you've produced. How do you begin a business from what you've produced? How do you bargain your way to your profits from what you've grown? Because many women are taken advantage of because they lack agency. I do believe that everyone has a voice. If that voice of a woman is nurtured, for her to know and believe that she has to earn from her sweat and toil, then she will really gain from it. But the fact that some of them really lack agency, because some cultures train women to miss their words, they train women to shut up even when they are being oppressed or something like.
Some parents sometimes force their school-going children to drop out and marry them off in exchange of cattle. Prolonged dry spells that lead to the death of their community cows is one of the major causes of poverty in their region.
This guy is from Kampala. He's original actually.
According to the United Nations Population Fund, Karamoja is classified as one of the world's poorest area, with high rates of malnutrition and a disproportionate number of 61% of its 1.2 million people living in absolute poverty and hunger. Despite several development initiatives by government and partners, poverty in the Karamoja region has remained pervasive. Karamoja's collective GDP accounts for less than 1% of the Uganda's total GDP. That's according to USAID 2017. This implies that the region's human capital is not adequately skilled to produce and drive economic growth, despite the vast natural resource potentials as the cattle corridor and minerals. Bedson Mumbere, Smart 24 TV.
Karamoja is also known for having cases of human trafficking in there, and it starts from the grassroots, that is from home. As you could definitely look at the situation as some parents sometimes force their school-going children to drop out and marry them off in exchange for cattle. We all know they are nomadic pastoralists in there. And prolonged dry spells that lead to death of the community animals is one of the major causes of poverty in this highly pastoral society of Karamoja. And when you try to add on the situation, according to the United Nations Population Fund, Karamoja is classified as one of the world's poorest areas with high rates of malnutrition and a disproportionate number. 61% of its 1.2 million people, according to the United Nations Population Fund, is that 61% of its 1.2 million people are living in absolute poverty. And those that are a bit in kind of recognized as a bit in a wealthy situation are those with a number of cattle. There's a lot of situations happening in Karamoja. As when you look at this, hunger and lack of access to food among the cases that are recorded highly in Karamoja. Despite several developments, by the way, initiatives that have been done by government and partnerships through even creating a minister for Karamoja, the region has remained pervasive, and Karamoja's collective GDP accounts for less than 1% of Uganda's total GDP. That is according to the USAID report in 2017, implying that the region's human capital is not adequately skilled to produce and drive economic growth despite the vast natural resource potential as a cattle corridor and the minerals attached to the region of Karamoja. Well, when you look at the situation is that in Karamoja, like we mentioned of the women in self-employment, the same applies to the region of Karamoja, as most probably the women are playing a very pivotal role in being the breadwinners at home, playing a very vital role to see that things are moving on in their homes. And like I said, some of us who have grown up understanding that your mother plays a pivotal role, and will take ekirowoozo ekigamba ekikoonako katono n'ogamba nti okay, maybe my mother laid a foundation for me. So 70% of the women in there are breadwinners completely. Why most of them are subjected to domestic violence. The men had a one-on-one with Agnes Igoe from immigration. She actually noted that a survey that was done in Karamoja is that most of the men provide one thing: security. And when you ask once you ask the men, what do you provide at home? We provide security. Boldly, we provide security. So the narrative has already changed. Men who are known to be breadwinners are normal. So in Karamoja, men boldly tell you they're providing security, and of which the women say the men are not providing the security they claim to be providing. So you can definitely see the situations in there and what is causing a number of situations in Karamoja, as the rise in domestic violence has been attached to financial constraints.